Hello everybody, and welcome to the Reglow channel. We're here with our grandmother's velvet garden mask with Pipple. And so first, let us enter into the plane of imagination. Standing on the land with the sky above and the sea that surrounds, we call in our teachers, we call in the elements of fire, water, earth, and air. To come guide us through the process of creation and imagination and processing. So we're going to sew together. If you'd like to join or work on something else with us, we welcome you. In this space, we're working with materials like recycled materials, and as we process these materials and recycle them, and as I narrate what I'm doing in the process, it can serve as an analogy, as I feel like, well, now since we're in the dream world, or since we're acknowledging the dream world and the relationship between our imagination and this plane, they can come together in the last video this is number 20, and the last one that we did in sequential time was number 19, and we've been sewing these loops so that we can attach them to the veil, so that the straps can then be held down, so that the veil can either be lifted or it can be held in place over the face. It has a rise and it has a fall. It lifts in an ascending motion and it descends. And so we're going to stitch folding in, stitch along, creating an enclosed tube, folding along the edges and holding in place. As we stitch around, and now I'm anchoring my threads. Securing them to the material. And how could an analogy of anchoring one's threads serve one's life? I did it a little bit inward because I know that I'm going to flip this seam allowance inside. Can we zoom in a little? Okay. So, asking ourselves, how could that serve when we anchor into a material? As a material and a piece of fabric, like a pattern that has become, it's taken its form through some kind of pattern, perhaps is one way I could describe it. A pattern formed by some kind of rhythm, some rhythm, as frequencies take form, as form emits frequencies, as forms influence each other's frequencies and create a whole other rhythm of frequencies. And I imagine it just layers. It just layers and layers and layers and layers, and then maybe beings emerge and breath emerges as we cycle through all these rhythms and frequencies, assigning meaning as the narratives are felt, as we relate to the narratives. And then those frequencies influence our own rhythms, and how it's like I imagine the stories and the narratives create an axis of resonance where depending on one's positionality, we feel our axes have been charged through our own personal experiences. And so when they interrelate, new harmonies emerge through new tensions. And they might not even be new, they're just could be old tensions, old tense strings, strung between the anchors. That is how the anchors. That's one analogy of the anchor. That's what we're present with. Anchored into our own experiences, yet still being willing to harmonize. Staying anchored. I'm imagining an instrument with strings and how each end of the string is held in place, and how that could be an anchor, how each end is an anchor of people's experience, and the string is what we're holding in between us. And that is what we play. That is what we strum, and how we harmonize. And then here, the tension is looping. It's almost like the rhythm plays on our eyes, or for me, the rhythm of the stitches play on my eyes and play on the texture. As the rhythm of the stitches is wrapped and looped around, creating a pattern. Held in place at one end, showing that the being that encompassed me, or that I encompassed, whatever it was, whatever way you want to see it. On one end, when I started, that is not going to be the same being as when I anchor this here. And so for this harmonization, I feel like it's holding myself, or it's like bracing myself through time. Holding, as we hold ourselves, as we hold each other, even in our minds. acknowledge that who we are is evolving from moment to moment, and that as we navigate this transformation, that we're holding space for I was gonna say like the futures that we imagine, but then I started to think that maybe it could be more like holding space for the present emergence. And either way, we're each on a journey, and that's also what the stitches represent to me, is like the steps along a journey, and the landscape, the materials coming together like the landscape of that. And so how do we tend our landscapes? These physical landscapes of scraps and out, like when I think about why people throw things away, maybe because they break, or maybe because like the trend is, it doesn't feel right anymore. Or maybe you do, maybe that doesn't matter, but it makes me think that like in order to be more mindful of how we're processing our materials and how we're using our materials, to think about our relationships with our materials and our memories of them. And when we grow, let's say we grow over a season, and through that season, trends also change. And it feels like it's this etheric story that is being refabricated to get people to buy things. When we sit with ourselves and sit with all of our materials and reflect with them as part of our landscape to tend and to heal, what do those processes have to teach us? Hey, Mouser. And then also how we share them. How do we share those processes? So here we are thinking about what we're thinking about, what we're doing, and sharing these processes with you. And The kitty too. The kitty's part of our landscape too. Yes, you are. Coming to the end of this particular loop and scratching our nostril and nodding off. Knotting off. Now we're going to tuck one end into the other end. And I'd like it to be twisted just how the other one is twisted. Like a Mobius. Like a toroid. Tuck one end into the other end. Like the Aurora Borealis, is that what it's called? Or are those the Northern Lights? I'm thinking of the snake that's eating its own tail. Okay. I think we're twisted, however, I'd like, okay. Cool. Okay. I wanted to line up the two edges, the two stitched edges. Stitching through, connecting the layers as the interlooping tunnels meet and the thread crosses through. All directions. Crosses through. You count how many times have I crossed through directions. Mindlessly bottled to the winding corridor of this empty space. And enter into empty space into the empty space. Contained by the void. And then it loops around. Joining through the intertwining loops. Okay, so we have them now. We have our loops. And we can join them. To the veil. The left one here is a little bit longer, but the left loop is longer than the amount that the tack from the green part is, but I'll just put long with long. Long John. Like a long john might be layered to keep warm. Oh, this is very twisted. Okay, well, I think it's more twisted than I thought it was, but that's okay because the twist is just gonna be there. We're going to attach this here along the edge. Stringing a double red thread onto the needle, holding in place where we're going to stitch and anchoring into the material. The tack still in place. Showing us where we begin as our marker is held in place until we have become the marker. Or until at least we've anchored into where the marker was. And also becoming the marker, because these stitches are on the surface. They're both internal and external because well, I don't know if that's really in this space. I'm questioning the border between the external and internal. I think that they become one and the same in the process, in their processes. Doing a blanket stitch with the red, wrapping around the yellow blanket stitch of the edge of the veil, and also around the wrap stitch of the tube. And as we sew this, thinking about I'm remembering that I was planning to do something different with this contraption, but when I don't think it's too late. Maybe it's even better now. So what I've been thinking was that we'll just continue onto the veil without the catching the tube, because we're going to catch the tube when we get further down. But having a space where they're not connected will be important for when we join the wing to the loop. Wrapping the tucking tails, wrapping the tails of the tacked, wrapping the tails of the tacked as they sit on the edge here. Wrapping the tails of the tacked until the end of them, and we will reach the the red veil soon. Merging with the ribbing that had bound, the ribbing that was bound. Merging between the veils, between the veils, between in the garden that survives. What parts of the garden have survived? Here, this is where we are. Resting with the garden that survived. What is apparent? What is not? What courses through the sensations of our thought? What courses through the sensations of our thoughts? Ooh, 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 ooh. Oh, grandmother. Nodded. Okay. Oh. I like what's happening on this edge. So here now, the wing comes through and wraps around. Or does it go through this way? Let us see on Pipple. How does this go? So this is the winged side, and I just kind of looped it through here, but it can be, see, we have our loops here and here, so it can be attached in either place. Trim, 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 trim. Okay. Yeah. Well, you know, it is what it is, and maybe I could. Oh, I could make a tack in the middle here so that would secure where the loop is, and also create a couple tunnels for where the wing comes through. So we'll just hold that in place for now, and we'll do the same thing on the other side. But first, let me tack this here. With the red thread, looping the thread through the needle. So when we loop our thread through the needle, what comes to mind? In your present moment? And how is that a place for you to, where you either have intentionally, consciously, or where you notice you've been anchoring yourself? And if that is something you would like, if that was a place, especially here where this part of the veil is in proximity to the ear. So is there anything behind the veil or in front of the veil that you would like to listen to, and where you're anchoring those thoughts? and how you listen. And I'm reflecting on how I listen and how I hear things. How I listen, how I empathize with people, and how sometimes I can over-identify with their pain and hold it as my own, but then at the same time I think about how that's an aspect of acknowledging how we're interconnected. So how can I listen, and how can I hold that awareness and that knowing and take action from a place of clarity? I think it's by acknowledging that we're all in different positions. And acknowledging the position that I'm in and being centered and anchored in that. And so here we are now, anchoring it off. Alright, so there we have that. And we can loop through many different ways now. We can play with that later. But here, anchoring, anchoring here, lining up with the marker like we did on the other side, tucking our tails, guiding the thread where we want it to go so it's not catching. Alright, now we're going to wrap the tails of our marker. Might be easier if we hold them in place and blanket stitch down. Wrapping the edges of the veil and the tube, going over the blanket stitch of our yellow thread that was finishing the veil. And wrapping around the place where the green stitch of the tube cascading down the side edge of this veil. Remembering that this tube is a little bit longer than the last, and that we still want our wing to be snug when it wraps around the tube to hold the veil in place. In the place of reflection, acknowledging each other's narratives too. Acknowledging the reality of the stories alive within our relationships. Coming down the side. We're going to continue to blanket stitch until we reach the other side of the green binding here, the green ribbed binding. Whatever binds you to what is green, what does green mean, and what is the essence of green. What is the integrity of green in itself? And the different essence, the chemicals and frequency of synthetic green. How does that speak to the green grass? How is that acknowledged? And now we come up to rejoining the tunnel to the veil. With our blanket stitch, we'll continue until this place. The whispering of my heart speaking with the whispering of Pebble's heart and the heart of the earth. I think we all have a different relationship with what that might even mean, that is reflected in our positions. And speaking with the heart of the earth, they know where we're going. They can sense it and they feel There's a lot of pain. When we acknowledge what we've neglected. And it's something that we can begin to heal when we acknowledge it every day. Because to heal the neglect is to see and to listen and to feel and to notice. All the little details of wonder about our existence here. And as we notice all of that, it becomes that becomes our relationship, is what we're noticing. And how do we choose to cultivate love every day? So we're going to tack here like we did before on the other side. Notice the textures and imagine how their spirits exist in the ether. What does that feel like? How do we sense that? Through our imaginations of not just our brain, but the mind of our bodies and our hearts. Like this breath that is alive. And how do you feel that? Emanating from the earth beneath your feet. Is it moving? What is the texture of the atmosphere? Is it floating? Is it rising? What does it feel like? How do we sense that beyond our words and the forms of this matrix? Sensing into into the life, like the emotional vibrancy of our environments. How do they move? How do they circulate? Okay. We did it. We did it. This is our mask. There we are. Thank you for being on this journey with us through Grandmother's Velvet Garden. May this mask continue to bring insight into that place and into our relationship with the wisdom of how to tend through our ancestors. And so we'd like to thank our guides in the plane of the imagination, and we'd like to release them, the elements of fire, water, earth, and air. Thank you. See you next time we share our creations and our processes.